History of my oldest ancestors of whom I am very proud descend. May 18, 1152, the wedding between Henry Plantagenet, later Henry II, King of England, and Eleanor of Aquitaine, Duchess of Aquitaine, Countess of Poitiers, Queen of France, later Queen Consort of England. My 28th, 3 times my grandparents. They were the parents of the kings of England, Ricardo Coracao de Leo and João Sem Terra, and they were great-grandparents of Dom Afonso III, King of Portugal. Henry II, King of England, was born in Le Mans, March 4, 1133, died in Chinon, July 6, 1189. He was the son of Godfrey V Plantagenet, Count of Anjou, born in 1113, died in 1151, and Matilda, Queen of England, born 1102, died 1167, paternal grandson of Fulcus V, Count of Anjou, King of Jerusalem, born in, died 1143, Anne of Ermengarda de Beaugency, Countess of Maine, born in, died 1126, and maternal grandson of Henry I, King of England, born in, died in 1135, and Matilda of Scotland. Princess of Scotland, was born in, died in 1118, daughter of Saint Margaret, Queen of Scots, and Malcolm III, King of Scotland. Henry II, or Henry Plantagenet, was King of England from 1154 until his death and patriarch of the Plantagenet dynasty. He was also Count of Anjou, Count of Maine, Duke of Normandy, Duke of Aquitaine, Count of Nates, and Lord of Ireland. At various times he also controlled Wales, Scotland, and Brittany. He was the son of Geoffrey V, Count of Anjou, and Matilda of England, daughter of King Henry I of England. Henry II became involved, at the age of 14, in his mother's efforts to claim the English throne occupied by Stephen of Blois. Henry was made Duke of Normandy and inherited Anjou in 1151, shortly afterwards marrying Eleanor of Aquitaine, whose marriage to King Louis VII of France had been annulled. Stephen agreed to a peace treaty after Henry's expedition to England in 1153. Stephen died the following year and Henry ascended the throne. Henry was an energetic and at times ruthless ruler, motivated by a desire to restore his grandfather's lands and privileges. During his first years of reign, he restored the royal administration, re-established hegemony over Wales, and gained full control of his lands in Anjou, Maine, and Touraine. Henry's desire to reform his relationship with the Catholic Church led to conflict with his former friend Thomas Becket, the Archbishop of Canterbury. This controversy lasted for much of the 1160s and resulted in the death of Becket in 1170. Soon after, conflict began with Louis VII, and the two kings fought, for decades, what was called the Cold War. Henry expanded his empire, often at Louis' expense, taking Brittany and heading south to Toulouse. Despite several peace conferences and treaties, no lasting agreement has been reached. By 1172 he controlled England, much of Wales, the eastern half of Ireland, and the western half of France, an area that was later called the Angevin Empire. Henry II and Eleanor of Aquitaine had 8 children. As they grew, tensions began to appear over the future inheritance of the empire, encouraged by Louis VII, King of France's first marriage of Eleanor of Aquitaine and her son Philip II. His heir apparent Henry the Young rebelled in protest in 1173, and was supported by his brothers Richard and Geoffrey and his mother. France, Scotland, Flanders, and Boulogne allied with the rebels. The revolt was defeated through vigorous military action and the talent of local commanders, many of whom were young men appointed for their loyalty and administrative skills. Henry the Younger and Godfrey rebelled once again in 1183, resulting in the death of the former. The Norman invasion of Ireland gave land to his youngest son John. However, the king struggled to find ways to satisfy his son's desires for land and immediate power. Philip managed to influence Richard, and Henry would make John his successor, with a final rebellion beginning in 1189. Defeated by the French king and his son, and also suffering from a peptic ulcer, Henry retreated to Chinon, in Anjou, where he died on the 6th of August. July 1189. His empire quickly collapsed during the reign of João Sem Terra, and he was succeeded by Richard the Lionheart. However, many of the changes that Henry had introduced during his long reign had lasting consequences. His legal changes are generally considered to have laid the foundations of English common law, while his intervention in Britain, Wales, and Scotland shaped the development of their societies and systems of government. Historical interpretations of Henry's reign have changed considerably over time. 18th-century scholars argued that the king was a driving force in the creation of a genuinely English monarchy and, in the end, a united Britain. During the Victorian expansion of the British Empire, historians were very interested in the formation of Henry's empire. However, they showed reservations about his private life and the Becket case. Chronology: Genal. The 19th of December, 1154 coronation of Henry II of England. The 21st of January, 1189 Philip II Augustus, King of France, Henry II, King of England, Prince Richard the Lionheart and Frederick Redbeard, Emperor of Germany, gathered their armies to begin the Third Crusade. Eleanor of Aquitaine, Queen Consort of France and England, Duchess of Aquitaine, Countess of Poitiers, was born in Bordeaux, the 1st of April, 1122, died in Poitiers, the 31st of March, 1204, was the daughter of William X, the Saint, Duke of Aquitaine, born in 1099, died in 1137, and Eleanor of Châteauroux, born in 1103, paternal granddaughter of William IX, the Troubadour, Duke of Aquitaine, born in 1071, died in 1126, and Matilda Philippa of Toulouse, born in 1070, died in 1117, and maternal granddaughter of Americo I, Viscount of Catalerald, born in 1077, died in 1151, and of Morbihan of Isle-Bouchard, born in 1075, died in 1153. Eleanor of Aquitaine, the 1st of April, 1122 to the 31st of March, 1204, was one of the richest and most powerful women of the Middle Ages, having been Duchess of Aquitaine and Countess of Poitiers, 1137 to 1204, in her own suo-jure right. She was also Queen Consort of France, 1137 to 1152, as wife of Louis VII, King of France, and later Queen of England, 1154 to 1189, as wife of Henry II, Plantagenet, in addition to being matriarch of the dynasty Plantagenet, who ruled England between 1154 and 1485. She was the eldest daughter of William X of Aquitaine, whom she succeeded in 1137, and Eleanor of Châteauroux. Eleanor of Aquitaine was the patron of important literary figures such as Bernard de Ventadorn, Wace, and Bernard de Saint-Maur, as well as several Catholic religious orders and congregations such as the Abbey of Fontevraud. She led armies several times during her life and was one of the leaders of the Second Crusade. Upon becoming Duchess of Aquitaine at the age of 14, Eleanor became the most sought-after bride in Europe, having married, 3 months after becoming Duchess, King Louis VII of France, with whom she had 2 daughters. As Queen of France, Eleanor participated in the Second Crusade, traveling to Palestine leading the army of Aquitaine and Poitou against the forces of Islam. After 15 years as Queen of France, she asked Pope Eugene III for an annulment of her marriage. Granted on March 21, 1152, based on the couple's consanguinity, they were 4th cousins. His 2 daughters were declared legitimate and their custody was granted to Louis, while Leonor's lands were returned to him. Soon after the annulment, Eleanor married Henry Plantagenet, Duke of Normandy and Count of Anjou on May 18, 1152 in Poitiers Cathedral. 2 years later, at Christmas 1154, she and her husband, now Henry II, were crowned King and Queen of England at Westminster Abbey in London. During the first 13 years of marriage, Enrique and Leonor had 8 children. However, in 1171, they fell out over his extramarital affairs, and he ended up arresting her in 1173 for supporting the revolt of her sons Henry, Richard, and Geoffrey against their father. Leonor was only released on July 6, 1189, when her husband died and her second son Ricardo Coracao de Leo ascended the throne of England. As Queen Mother, Eleanor acted as regent of England and Normandy when Richard left for the Third Crusade, and negotiated his ransom when he was imprisoned in Austria. Upon the accession of her son João Sem Terra, in 1199, Leonor participated in the last battles to guarantee her permanence on the throne. And after an intense life of 82 years, being Queen of France and England consecutively, she took the veil at the Abbey of Fontevraud, where she ended up dying as a nun on March 31, 1204. Biography. Eleanor of Aquitaine was born into the most literate and cultured court of her time. Her grandfather was William IX the Troubadour, Duke of Aquitaine, one of the first troubadours and vernacular poets. He was also an extremely cultured man, who passed on his taste for culture to his son, heir William X, who, in turn, offered an exceptional education to his two daughters. Leonor and Petronilla were fluent in around 8 languages, learned mathematics and astronomy, and discussed laws and philosophy on par with the doctors of the church. This education, exceptional because they were women and at a time when most rulers were illiterate, allowed them to develop a critical spirit and political sagacity, useful especially to Leonor, who would govern herself. William X also had the pleasure of involving his heir Leonor in the various aspects of governance, taking her on visits throughout her territories. Family and descent. From the first marriage of Eleanor of Aquitaine, my 28th grandmother, 3 times my grandmother, with Louis VII King of France, my 29th and 31st grandfather, they had 2 daughters. Marie de Franca, 1145–1198, married in 1164, with Count Henry I of Champagne and Troyes, my 27th grandparents, twice my grandparents. Alice de Franca, 1151–1198, married in 1164, with Count Theobald V of Blois and Chartres. From the second marriage of Eleanor of Aquitaine, my 28th grandmother, 3 times my grandmother, with Henry II of England, my 28th grandfather, 3 times my grandfather, they had 8 children. William IX, Count of Poitiers, 1153–1156, died at the age of 3 from convulsions. Henry, co-king of England, 1155–1183, married Margaret of France, with no surviving descendants. Matilda, Duchess of Saxony, 1156–1189, married Henry the Lion, Duke of Saxony and Bavaria. Richard I of England, Heart of the Lion, 1157–1199, married Berengaria of Navarre. Geoffrey II, Duke of Brittany, 1158–1186, married Constance, Duchess of Brittany. Leonor Plantagenet, Queen of Castile, 1162–1214, married Alfonso VIII, King of Castile, my 27th grandparents, 3 times my grandparents. Joan, Queen of Sicily, 1165–1199, married for the first time with William II of Sicily, with no surviving descendants. She married for the second time with Raimondo VI of Toulouse, with descendants. Joachim Terra, 1166–1216, married Isabel de Angoulême. Eleanor of Aquitaine was the grandmother of King Henry III of England, great-grandmother of Edward I of England, great-great-grandmother of Edward II of England, great-great-grandmother of Edward III of England, great-grandmother of Richard II of England. And she is the ancestor of all the British monarchs of the dynasties subsequent to the Plantagenet, of all the kings of the House of Lancaster and the House of York, both branches of the Plantagenet dynasty. As well as the Tudor dynasty, the result of the union between the Lancasters and Yorks of Welsh origin, the Scottish House of Stuart, the German House of Hanover and the House of Windsor, including the current King of England Charles III. Through her daughter Eleanor Plantagenet, Princess of England, my 27th grandmother, 3 times my grandmother, Eleanor of Aquitaine is the ancestor of all the Iberian and French royal houses. Eleanor of Aquitaine's granddaughter, Berengaria of Castile, my 26th grandmother, 3 times my grandmother, inserted her blood into the Spanish royal lineage. Her other granddaughter Blanche of Castile became Eleanor of Aquitaine, ancestor of all the kings of France from Louis IX of France onwards, and by her granddaughter Dona Urraca of Castile, Queen of Portugal, my 26th and 27th grandmother, married to King Dom Afonso II of Portugal, my 26th and 27th grandfather, all the kings of Portugal from Dom Afonso III of Portugal, my 25th and 26th grandfather, descend from Leonor of Aquitaine. And on the part of her daughter Matilda of England, Duchess of Saxony, Eleanor of Aquitaine became the ancestor of dozens of German royal and noble houses, including the houses of Habsburg, Wettin, Wittelsbach, Hohenzollern and Hesse. Through the Queen's German descendants, her blood was carried into the Scandinavian royal families. Through other lineages, Eleanor of Aquitaine is also the ancestor of most of the Italian and Slavic royal and noble houses.